Hello, my wonderful friends. Today I've got a story to share, one that's sure to move you, lift your spirits, and offer some powerful insights about life, success, and the strength to keep pushing forward. This isn't just any story. It's about a man who wasn't only an actor or a comedian. He became a legend. A man whose name shines brightly in the history of cinema. Someone who brought laughter to millions, even while quietly carrying his own sorrows. His name? Sir Charles Spencer Chaplin, but the world knows and loves him simply as Charlie Chaplin. And let me tell you, there's no one, absolutely no one, who comes close to his brilliance. His legacy stands the test of time. His humor speaks across cultures, across generations. And his life? It's a masterclass in determination, originality, and the courage to never give up. Even now, long after his era has passed, he remains alive in our hearts. His films still light up faces with joy. His personal battles still fuel our inspiration. And his life story? Oh, my dear friends, it's a powerful reminder that no matter how rough things get, we must keep moving forward. Because this isn't just a tale, it's a journey. One filled with hardship, rejection, poverty, triumph, and ultimately, eternal impact. Stick around until the very end, because this story isn't just great for improving your English. It's going to light a fire in you like never before. So are you ready? Let's dive in. Charlie Chaplin came into the world right in the center of London, England, on April 16, 1889. His parents, Hannah Chaplin and Charles Chaplin Sr., were both performers. They lived for the stage, singing and acting their way through the vibrant world of music hall entertainment. But fate had a different path in store for little Charlie. His father struggled deeply with alcoholism. He drank heavily and eventually disappeared from their lives, leaving the family behind when Charlie was still just a young boy. That left Hannah, his mother, to raise two children on her own, Charlie and his older half-brother, Sidney. And if you're thinking their lives were even remotely easy, think again. They were swallowed by poverty, the kind that's harsh, relentless, and impossible to ignore. There were nights when there simply wasn't enough to eat. Sometimes Charlie would fall asleep with an empty stomach. Other times, his mother would pretend she wasn't hungry, just so her boys could have a little more to eat. They bounced from one cramped, shabby room to another, always one step away from being kicked out. But Charlie was still a child, and children, no matter how tough the world gets, somehow manage to find reasons to laugh, to smile, and to hope. Charlie's mother, Hannah, was incredibly gifted. She could sing, she could act, and she poured her heart into every performance. She worked hard on stage, hoping that the few coins she earned would be enough to keep her children fed. Charlie adored watching her. He'd sit quietly backstage, eyes wide with wonder, imagining himself under the spotlight one day, hearing the applause of a crowd. But once again, fate took a harsh turn. One dreadful evening during a performance, Hannah suddenly lost her voice. She opened her mouth to sing, but no sound came out. Her voice had vanished. The audience grew impatient. They yelled at her. Some even hurled objects toward the stage, demanding she leave. And then, in the middle of that chaos, something unexpected and truly magical took place. A tiny boy, just 5 years old, stepped out onto the stage. It was Charlie. He picked up the microphone, and without hesitation, he began to sing. Then he danced. And the audience? They burst into laughter. They applauded wildly, Cheers echoed through the theater. That was the very first time Charlie ever performed in front of an audience. The first time he discovered the pure joy of making people laugh. And somewhere deep in his heart, he felt it. This is what I was meant to do. This is my calling. But as you'll soon see, life wasn't ready to make things easy. Not yet. After years of living with hunger, heartache, and constant struggle, something even more devastating happened. Charlie's mother, Hannah, suffered a mental breakdown. Her mind couldn't take the pressure anymore, and she was sent away to a mental institution. That left Charlie and his brother Sidney all alone. No parents to care for them, no money in their pockets, and no place to call home. They became children of the streets, wandering aimlessly, begging for scraps, and doing whatever they could just to survive another day. Picture this: a small boy shivering in the cold, stomach empty, searching through garbage bins just to find a bite to eat. That little boy was Charlie Chaplin. But did he let that break him? Not for a second. Did he ever let go of hope? Absolutely not. He kept moving forward, because deep in his heart, he held on to a dream. And my friends, this is where his true journey begins. Charlie Chaplin was now just a tiny, hungry, forgotten boy wandering the streets of London. He had no roof over his head, no loving arms to hold him, and no idea where his next meal would come from. He and Sidney eventually ended up in workhouses, awful, heartless institutions where the poor were made to work in return for a little food and a place to sleep. These places weren't shelters. They were cold, unforgiving, and filled with pain. Charlie was only 7 years old when he first stepped into one of these grim workhouses. Imagine a child that young, so small, so full of innocence, being thrown into a harsh world of labor and loneliness. To make things worse, he was separated from Sidney and sent off to a different workhouse, completely alone. When Charlie was finally reunited with his mother, things had only gotten worse. Her condition had deteriorated. Her mind was fading fast. There were moments when she looked at him and didn't even know who he was. Charlie could only watch, helpless and heartbroken, as doctors took her away once again, this time back to the mental hospital. He cried, he screamed, but there was nothing he could do. She was gone, and now Charlie was truly alone, just a young boy with nothing, except for one thing that still burned bright inside him, a dream. Even in the depths of his pain, that dream gave him strength. Charlie wanted to perform. He longed to be on stage, just like his mother had once been. He wanted to make people laugh, to bring joy to others, even though the world had shown him so much cruelty. But where does a poor, homeless boy begin? How does someone with nothing take the first step toward a dream so big? The first steps toward the spotlight. Charlie knew he had only one path forward. He had to work, and he had to fight for what he believed in. He was still just a child, but he began picking up whatever small jobs he could find. He washed dishes in dingy kitchens, delivered newspapers through the rain, and even took a job making toys. But no matter where he worked, his heart was always somewhere else, on the stage. Then one day, while walking the streets, he saw a group of performers entertaining a crowd, acting, joking, making people laugh. And something deep inside him lit up. He knew instantly, this is it. This is where it starts. So he stepped forward and joined them. He began performing in the streets, dancing, singing, doing little comedy skits, anything to bring smiles to strangers' faces. In the beginning, no one really paid attention. People would just pass by, barely glancing at him. But Charlie, he didn't let that stop him. He kept going, he kept performing, and more importantly, he kept getting better. He watched seasoned comedians closely, studying how they moved, how they timed their jokes, how they used facial expressions to say more than words ever could. Little by little, things began to change. People started noticing him. They began to stop and watch. And then, laughter. Real, heartfelt laughter. And in that moment, Charlie felt something he'd never felt before. Pure magic. He realized he had a gift. He could make people smile. He could lift their spirits. And that meant everything to a boy who had grown up with so much sadness. At just 14 years old, Charlie got a break, a real opportunity. He was hired by a traveling theater group called the 8 Lancashire Lads. Now, it wasn't a glamorous role. He was just one small part of a bigger act. But to Charlie, it was the beginning of something important. He poured himself into the work. He practiced more than anyone else. He studied every move, perfected every step, and took every chance to grow. And that hard work, it didn't go unnoticed. His natural talent began to shine through. One day, a theater director spotted him and said, "That boy, he's got something special." From there, everything began to shift. Charlie was given bigger roles and more stage time. People started seeing what he was truly capable of. Then, at the age of 16, he landed his first major acting role in a stage production of Sherlock Holmes. Charlie Chaplin was no longer just a kid performing on street corners. He was stepping onto real stages, under real lights, performing in front of packed theaters. And the audience? They loved him. Directors saw something rare in him. The way he moved, the emotions he could express with nothing more than a glance or a gesture. He didn't need many words. His face, his body, his timing, they spoke volumes. And then it happened. A moment that would completely change the course of Charlie's life. Hollywood came knocking. In 1910, Charlie was offered a once-in-a-lifetime opportunity, a chance to travel to America. He had been invited to join the renowned comedy troupe Fred Carno's company, which was touring the United States. This was massive. America was the land of dreams, the place where anything felt possible. So, with hope in his heart and dreams in his suitcase, Charlie boarded a ship and set sail across the ocean toward a brand new world. When he arrived, everything felt bigger, bolder. The streets were wider, the people louder, the energy unlike anything he'd ever known. And most importantly, Hollywood was there. Charlie felt it deep in his bones. This is it. This is where I'm meant to be. This is where I'll shine. Then, in 1913, something extraordinary happened. A film studio called Keystone Studios took notice of him. They offered him a small role in a silent movie, just a minor part. But Charlie saw something more, a door opening, a chance to create something unforgettable. So he got to work. He dreamed up a character unlike any other, a little man with baggy clothes, a tight-fitting coat, a bowler hat tilted just so, a tiny toothbrush mustache, and a walk that would one day become world famous. That character was the Tramp, and with it, Charlie Chaplin gave birth to one of the most iconic figures in film history. At first, people weren't quite sure what to make of him. The character was unusual, odd even. But the moment Charlie performed, when he moved, when he acted without saying a single word, when he made people laugh with just a glance or a stumble, audiences were enchanted. The world fell in love. His films exploded in popularity. Suddenly, producers were lining up, begging him to create more. Studios offered him enormous sums of money, unheard of for the time. And in just a few short years, the little boy who once dug through trash cans in London had become the biggest movie star on Earth. By the year 1917, Charlie Chaplin wasn't just a star, he was a worldwide sensation. People lined up for hours just to catch a glimpse of his films. His image was everywhere, on posters, in newspapers, on the covers of magazines. No matter the country, no matter the language, people adored him. His comedy spoke to everyone. And the most incredible part? He was only getting started. But behind all the applause and flashing lights, Charlie was still the same person deep down. He was still that little boy who once went to bed hungry, who cried alone for his mother, who wandered the streets with nothing but hope in his heart. Now, that same boy had climbed all the way to the top. The kid from the slums of London was now the most famous movie star on the planet. And it wasn't just fame. People loved him, truly loved him. Audiences laughed with him. They cried with him. They felt connected to him in a way that was rare, even magical. But even with all his success, Charlie felt something else, a new kind of hunger. He didn't just want to act anymore. That wasn't enough. Now, he wanted to shape the entire movie. He wanted to write the stories. He wanted to direct the scenes. He wanted to compose the music. He wanted to bring every emotion to life, his way. But Hollywood wasn't ready for that. Back then, movie studios held all the power. They told actors what to do, how to act, even which roles to take. Actors were expected to follow orders, not give them. But Charlie, he wasn't like the others. He refused to be controlled. He stood up and said, "No one will decide for me. I'll make my own movies, my way." By 1917, Charlie Chaplin wasn't just popular. He had become a global phenomenon. Crowds stretched around the block just to see one of his films. His face appeared everywhere, on posters, in newspapers, across magazine covers. It didn't matter where in the world you were or what language you spoke, people adored him. His comedy crossed all borders. And the most remarkable thing, he was only just beginning. But beneath the spotlight and the roaring applause, Charlie remained the same at his core. He was still that boy who once slept with an empty stomach, the boy who wept for his mother, the boy who wandered London's cold streets, chasing a dream. And now, somehow, that same boy had risen to unimaginable heights. The child from the gutters of London had become the most recognized movie star on Earth. And this wasn't just about fame. Charlie was deeply loved. People laughed with him. They shed tears during his performances. They saw a part of themselves in him. His art made them feel, and that connection was powerful. But even as the world cheered for him, Charlie felt a new fire burning inside. He didn't want to just act anymore. That wasn't enough. Now, he wanted complete creative control. He wanted to write the scripts, direct the scenes, score the music, craft every moment from beginning to end. He wanted to tell stories exactly as he imagined them, raw, emotional, and uniquely his. But Hollywood wasn't built for that kind of independence. In those days, movie studios ruled everything. Actors were given scripts, roles, and instructions. They followed orders, or they were replaced. But Charlie Chaplin, he was different. He wasn't about to let anyone dictate his art. He took a stand and declared, "No one will control me. I'll make my own films, on my terms." Even after he'd achieved it all, he never took his foot off the gas. He poured months, sometimes even years, into crafting a single film. Every gesture, every subtle joke, every tiny nuance was carefully considered. Nothing was left to chance. He wasn't just making movies, he was aiming to leave a mark on history. And then he did something no one thought could actually happen. By the late 1920s, Hollywood was going through a transformation. A brand new kind of film had emerged, movies with sound. For the first time, audiences could actually hear actors speak on screen. The silent era was fading fast. Everyone around Charlie told him to move on, abandon silent films. They urged him to embrace the new wave, talking pictures. But Charlie stood his ground. He believed cinema didn't need dialogue to be powerful. To him, emotion spoke louder than any line of script ever could. So, in 1931, at a time when silent films were considered a thing of the past, he premiered City Lights. The film turned out to be one of the most heartfelt and visually poetic movies ever created. Even without a single word of spoken dialogue, it moved audiences to tears. The final scene, where Charlie's character gazes at a blind girl, remains one of the most iconic and emotionally charged moments in cinematic history. Even now, many still consider it the greatest silent film ever made. With that film, Charlie showed the world that raw emotion could carry more weight than any line of dialogue. But by the time the late 1930s rolled around, the world was shifting once again. Adolf Hitler was gaining power in Germany. His rise brought a wave of hatred, violence, and fear. And Charlie noticed something unsettling. Hitler wore the exact same mustache he did. Soon, people began drawing comparisons between the two. That's when Charlie made a bold choice. He would use his greatest weapon, humor, to take a stand against hate. In 1940, he released The Great Dictator. It was his first film with spoken dialogue. But it wasn't just a comedy. It was a courageous call to the world. In the final scene, Charlie delivers a speech that still echoes through time, one of the most stirring, heartfelt speeches ever captured on film. "We think too much and feel too little," he said. "More than machinery, we need humanity. Let us fight for a world of reason. Let us fight for freedom." And the world listened. That speech became iconic, watched, quoted, and remembered by millions, even decades later. It was a turning point. Charlie wasn't just a comic genius. He had become a voice for truth, for justice, for people everywhere. But not everyone welcomed that voice. Hollywood began to turn on him. He was too influential, too fiercely independent, and his political messages made some people uncomfortable. So, the backlash began. They started accusing him of things he never did, trying to silence the man who once made the world laugh and think. Lies began to spread about him, stories that weren't true, whispered until they echoed like fact. And in 1952, the pressure finally pushed him out. Charlie was forced to leave the very country he had helped shape through his art. Heartbroken, he left America behind and settled in Switzerland. He stepped away from the spotlight, choosing a quieter life with his family. The cameras stopped rolling, but the world never stopped remembering him. Then, something remarkable happened. In 1972, 2 decades later, Hollywood had a change of heart. They realized the injustice they had done and invited Charlie back. At the Academy Awards, he returned to the stage. What followed was a moment unlike any other, a standing ovation that lasted 12 straight minutes, the longest in Oscar history. That night, after all the silence and exile, Charlie stood victorious because he wasn't just a performer. He had become something greater, a legend. Charlie's story reminds us of one powerful truth: never give up, no matter how heavy life gets, no matter how little you have, no matter how many people try to bring you down. If your dream means something to you, fight for it. Charlie started out as a homeless child with nothing, and somehow he became one of the most beloved figures in the world. But behind the applause, behind the success and the iconic smile, his personal life was marked by pain. He was betrayed by people he trusted. Even governments turned their backs on him. And incredibly, even after his death, something unthinkable happened. What follows is a deeper look into the private world of Charlie Chaplin, his complicated relationships, his most painful betrayals, his final quiet years in Switzerland, and the unbelievable story of how his body was stolen from his grave. Because Charlie Chaplin wasn't just a genius in life, his story, even after death, remains unforgettable. When it came to love, Charlie's life was anything but simple. He tended to fall fast and hard, and more often than not, those whirlwind romances ended in heartache and chaos. Over the course of his life, Charlie married 4 times, but the first 3 marriages unraveled. Each one ended with the woman walking away, sometimes taking his money, and in a few cases, dragging him into bitter court battles. People began to whisper, "Charlie can make the world laugh, but he can't seem to find love for himself." But then, everything shifted. In 1943, at the age of 54, Charlie met Una O'Neill. She was just 18 at the time, and many raised their eyebrows at the age difference. Critics called it inappropriate, said it wouldn't last. But Charlie didn't pay them any mind, because this time, it felt different. For the first time, he had found something real. Una became the center of his world. She wasn't just his partner, she was his anchor. When the world turned on him, she stood by his side, unshaken. She was his soulmate, his confidant, his entire heart. And despite the odds, despite what everyone said, they built a life together that was full of joy. Their love lasted a lifetime. They had 8 children and created a home filled with warmth and laughter. For the first time, Charlie experienced what it meant to have a true family. He spent his final years in a stunning home nestled in the Swiss countryside. For 25 peaceful years, that house became his sanctuary. Life slowed down. He read, he wrote, and he played with his kids. He'd stroll through the garden, reflecting on his past, the triumphs, the heartbreak, the path he had walked. And every now and then, he'd sit back and watch one of his old films. And just like the rest of us, he'd smile and laugh. Even though he had left Hollywood behind, the world never left him. Charlie Chaplin remained beloved across the globe. His films, his smile, his legacy, they lived on in the hearts of millions. Then, on December 25, 1977, the world awoke to heartbreaking news. Charlie had passed away peacefully in his sleep at the age of 88. It was Christmas morning. A sudden stillness fell over the world. The man who had brought laughter to billions was gone. And this time, it was the audience who wept. From every corner of the planet, tributes poured in. Headlines called him the greatest comedian the world had ever known. But then, just when people thought the story had ended, something almost unbelievable occurred. 3 months after his passing, something straight out of a dark comedy unfolded. In the dead of night, a group of thieves broke into Charlie's grave. They dug up the earth, lifted his coffin from the ground, and stole his body. Yes, his body was literally kidnapped. The thieves demanded a ransom, $600,000, from Charlie's grieving family. But Una, his wife, refused to be shaken. She stayed calm and even said Charlie would have found this ridiculous. He would have laughed. For weeks, the world was stunned. People asked the same question over and over. Where is Charlie Chaplin's body? After a massive police search, the truth came out. The culprits were found. Two men from Eastern Europe, both poor and desperate. It was a bizarre and tragic chapter in an already extraordinary life story. They had taken his body out of desperation, hoping it would be their ticket out of poverty. Eventually, Charlie's remains were recovered and returned to his family. This time they buried him in a reinforced grave, sealed with concrete, so no one would ever disturb his rest again. But here's the truth. Although Charlie Chaplin physically left this world in 1977, he never really disappeared. Every time we laugh, every time a film moves us to tears, every time art touches our soul, Charlie is there. He reminded us that life isn't about wealth, status, or power. It's about joy. It's about love. It's about holding on to hope, even when you have nothing left. Through every setback, through every betrayal, through every injustice, he kept moving forward. He never gave up. Charlie Chaplin isn't just a name from the past, he's a feeling. He's a symbol of resilience, of creativity, of heart, the greatest comedian in history, and the kind of inspiration that never fades. So if he could rise from nothing and touch the hearts of millions, you can too. Dream without limits, work with purpose, and one day, your story might be the one that lights the way for someone else. Though Charlie's story may have come to a close, his legacy lives on. His movies, his message, his spirit, they're timeless. If this story moved you, don't keep it to yourself. Share it, because Charlie's voice still matters, and the world still needs his reminder. A day without laughter is a day wasted. Thank you, Charlie Chaplin. You'll never be forgotten.